Alright, we are beginning Chapter 2, Linear Relations and Functions. We're going to cover 2.1 to 2.4 today. We're going to split this into 2 days. It's a lot of stuff you should remember from Algebra 1 and Pre-Algebra. I'm going to give you a few formulas to remember what you need to know. The first formula is slope. Slope is known as m, which is the formula is y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. You can also use rise over run. This formula, the y2 minus y1, is helpful when you have two ordered pairs, your x comma y's. Rise over run is helpful when you have a graph already and you can just count. It's very easy. Rise is up and down. Up is positive, down is negative. Run is left and right. Left is negative, right is positive. This is something you should already know. The next equation is for slope-intercept form. See if you can remember the slope-intercept form before I write it down for you. It is y equals mx plus b. What does the m stand for? We already talked about it. It's slope from above. What does the b stand for? The b is the y-intercept of the graph. That's why it's called slope-intercept, because you have your slope and you also have the y-intercept. Which one do you graph first? You graph your y-intercept first. From there, you can use your slope. So in math, a lot of times things go in alphabetical order, which is true here. The b comes before the m, if that helps you. The next slide. Now we're going to talk about x and y intercepts. To find the x-intercept, you set what to 0? Y. To find the x-intercept, you set y equal to 0. This is going to be substitution when we get there. To find the y-intercept, you set x to 0 and solve. When you graph them, which is your x-axis and which is your y? This is the x and this is the y. So if you have an x-intercept, you go on your x-axis. If you have a y-intercept, you go on your y-axis. You only need 2 points to graph a line. So whether you use this equation or the one from before, you're going to have 2 points. You can always graph more than that if you'd like to. The next thing we're going to talk about is domain and range. Do you remember what the domain is? The domain is the x answers. The range is the y. So again, x comes before y, d comes before r. Hopefully that helps you remember. Parallel and perpendicular lines. Do you remember what a parallel line is? It's two lines that are never going to cross. So the symbol for parallel, if you've had geometry already, looks like an 11 because they look parallel. Parallel lines have what kind of slope? They have the same slope. What I do to remember is parallel has an A, same has an A. Perpendicular lines, again in geometry the symbol looks like an upside down T. Perpendicular lines are going to cross at a 90-degree angle. Perpendicular lines have an opposite reciprocal slope. Some people call it an opposite flip. That's the same thing. The fancy term is opposite reciprocal. So for example, if you have a line with a slope of, 2, the parallel slope would be 2. If you have a line with a slope of 2, the perpendicular slope would be the opposite, so a negative, flip, so 1/2. The final thing we're going to discuss today is the function. It has to pass the vertical line test. If you remember, vertical is up and down. Or no repeated x values. So what that means is the vertical line test, if they give you a graph, it cannot cross a vertical line more than once. If they give you the x and y values, you don't want a repeated x value. So here's an example. Is this a function? Yes or no? The answer is yes. See the vertical lines? It never crosses a vertical line more than once. Is this a function? Yes or no? No. If you look, it crosses the vertical line more than once, which if I were to write those as ordered pairs, pretend that's -2, 2, and -2, -2, these have the same repeated x value. That is not allowed to happen. If you have any questions, take a minute and write them down now. If not, I'm going to go ahead and move on to the first few examples. So this is from section 2-1. Number 1.